We all want to be happy. But does it ever feel to you that our pursuit of happiness feels like we're on a treadmill, forever moving, but never quite getting anywhere?
Turns out, that treadmill has a name in the field of psychology. The hedonic treadmill. It's the observation that our level of happiness, after rising or falling in response to positive or negative events, ultimately returns back to its default.
I know that sounds a little depressing, but I promise this episode is far from depressing. You see, in a relatively short time, psychological science has made great strides in understanding how we can achieve happiness. In this episode, I'm on a journey to see if the greatest minds in the field have come up with some simple nudges to be happier.
Could the road to happiness be as simple as taking a selfie? Wait a minute. A selfie? Are we serious? Hey, are you sure this is the right script? There is nothing quite like producing a documentary about finding happiness in a fast-paced city like Singapore. Few cities in the world can claim to have the dubious honour of occupying opposite ends of global rankings on happiness quite like the Lion City.
In the 2023 World Happiness Report, Singapore came out on top as the happiest country in Asia and 25th in the world.
Unhappy netizens were only too happy to throw brickbats at the report. Adding fuel to the debate, another study released just half a year later seems to contradict the finding. The study found that only a small proportion of people in Singapore feel high levels of vitality, defined as a person's capacity to thrive.
Only 1 in 10 in Singapore had high levels of vitality, half the global average. So are people in Singapore happy or not?
Tambaya Siok Kwan is probably the most qualified person to answer that question. Few, if any, have studied the happiness of the people in Singapore for as long as she has.
We started this research over 20 years ago when happiness was not such a hot, trending topic. But we noticed that over time, the interest has been increasing. So in a way, we caught the wave early. We didn't know it was such a big wave, but when it came, we're very happy to continue. So every 5 years, we'll do a nationwide survey of at least 1,500 Singaporeans, and then we'll analyze the data set and report the results.
What are some of the findings in your survey of Singapore?
Looking back on 20 years of data, the bright spot was that the social relationships and support still is strong. People report very high levels of satisfaction with the relationship with their spouses, their children, their siblings. But happiness levels, unfortunately, we've seen them slide over the years.
Wow, very sad.
Terrible, very sad.
In the 2023 World Happiness Report, Singapore was ranked the highest in happiness in Asia. Why is that?
So Singapore does pretty well on the cognitive measures. They refer more to a attitudinal perception about how good your life is. So for the World Happiness Report, they looked at 6 important factors that affect life evaluations. So income, health, social support, the freedom to make life decisions, generosity of the people, and the lack of corruption. So for cognitive evaluations, on the whole, Singaporeans do very well on that. But if you look at other measures that are used in the World Happiness Report, Singapore may not do so well.
Can you give me examples?
Okay, so in addition to the cognitive, they also do positive and negative emotions.
Emotions?
Yeah, so they'll ask you, yesterday, right, did you experience worry, sadness, anger? Okay, so these are the negative emotions. They will also ask about the positive emotions. Did you laugh and smile a lot? Did you learn, do something interesting, right? Did you enjoy your life? On that end, we don't do so well.
So the data shows that many of us in Singapore do think we have the building blocks to a happy life, strong family ties, health, and so on. Yet emotionally, we don't feel happy. Why are we so negative? It turns out in the study of the mind, there is a field called positive psychology. And I wonder if this is the field that could provide answers to our conundrum.
An expert in that field is Grace Lee.
So what is positive psychology?
Positive psychology is simply the study of how humans thrive. What makes a person flourish? So, for example, despite adversities, challenges, how do some people overcome them? How do some people thrive in the face of it while other people don't do as well?
So if I know all of that, then I'm going to be a happy person.
Having the knowledge is good in the sense that you know what things to put into place. Humans are so full of cognitive biases that you can't guarantee future happiness. Cognitive biases that I think are really important to know about are impact duration and the focusing illusion. We as in humans, we make the mistake of thinking that a particular event in the future is going to make us feel a certain way for longer than it actually does, and it's going to be more powerful than it actually is. The idea of focalism is that we focus entirely on the event itself, and we neglect to consider all the other events that surround it. So if it's a good thing, for example, you could win the lottery, or if it's a bad thing, there are still all these other things going on in your life that might be just as important, kids, a job, and there is affective forecasting. It's the idea that you predict how you will feel in regards to future emotional events. And we are very bad at that. For example, you are offered a promotion, but that promotion requires you to move to Vietnam. And so you just say to yourself, I don't want to leave Singapore. But then let's say you decide you're gonna go anyway. Once you get there, you say to yourself, wow, I am so happy here. I love Vietnamese food. I love the pho. I love the bun. I'm making new friends. I'm learning a few new Vietnamese words. I have made the best decision. What has happened in between the time you were worried about it and the time now is that your psychological immune system has worked. What that means is you've rationalized the entire mood. You've found things to love about it. It might help us to remember in the future that our psychological immune system will help us to recover much faster and much better than we thought we would. Sometimes making a non-retractable choice is the best outcome for us, because when we make that choice that cannot be changed, we make the best of it. So we're going to restage an experiment that shows how the psychological immune system works when you don't have a choice.
I am setting up an experiment with Grace Lee, an expert in positive psychology, to understand how our psychological immune system helps us come to terms with a choice that can't be changed. In this experiment, 5 strangers will be ranking the visual appeal of these cakes from their most to least favourite.
I like the fruits, but I think the color contrast is not my favorite.
I'm going to pick this as a third one. It looks fresh, so I kind of like that.
Kind of looks like a onde onde. I quite like that as a dessert.
Once they are done ranking their cakes, they are offered a freebie.
We would like to offer you one of these cakes to take home today.
But there is a catch. They can only take home either their third or fourth choice.
I think I have a very clear answer, and the answer will be apple.
With the first and second choice out of contention, all of them pick their third choice. To get the participants acquainted with the cake they are taking home fast,
Please spend 10 minutes drawing this cake. Can you please re-rank the cakes?
you'd be forgiven for thinking that 10 minutes shouldn't make a difference to how each participant ranks their cakes. Yet for two of the participants, something remarkable happens. Jesselyn's original third choice, the cake she can take home, shifted up to second place.
I think that actually is nicely shaped and quite elegant. I think what really wins me over is the design on the top.
And Celeste's take-home cake, originally her third choice, shot up to take first place.
I'm taking into account the liking of my family members. In terms of bringing this cake home, the majority of my family members and I would prefer this.
Did it have anything to do with knowing that you're going to take it home?
I think it did. When I was told I was gonna get this cake, I felt this is mine now, like a sense of ownership. So of course I have to like what I own.
So what did the experiment tell us?
What we were trying to demonstrate is that the psychological immune system helps you to rationalize that this was actually the best choice. So that when we asked participants to re-rank, they moved the one that they picked up higher so that the ranking would be higher than third or fourth. So in the original experiments, it's based on a study that was done about 20 years ago. The study found that whichever one that they selected, they ended up liking more later if the choice was unchangeable. If you're presented with something you don't necessarily like, you start to manufacture that happiness. Your psychological immune system works and strategizes and persuades you that you actually like it. Manufactured happiness, or what your psychological immune system does for you. Whatever cognitive strategies you use to make yourself feel good, to make yourself feel better, that's as real as happiness happening upon you.
So happiness isn't really about what happens to us. We literally have it within us to synthesize happiness. If that's the case, I wonder if there's some simple, practical nudges that I can employ on a day-to-day basis to make me feel happier.
Andy Ho makes it a point to keep photos of his family by his work desk. It's just one strategy he employs to keep himself happy. He's actually an award-winning psychologist who has found 10 acclaimed clinical interventions to help people psychologically.
And I know that you're the person that can help me be nudged into happiness.
For the simplicity of the next few days, I can ask you to engage in two activities. The first one is to take a selfie of yourself smiling for the next 5 days every day.
So just a selfie.
Yeah. And then the second thing is to take a picture every day of things that made you happy. It could be something that you ate that made you feel really good, or a task that you're doing that made you feel very fulfilled.
So how's that going to make me happy?
We can explain it to you after the 5 days trial.
Okay, I'm very intrigued.
I've been asked to capture moments of joy with a selfie and a photo for 5 days. It's part of my journey to find nudges that help push us towards feeling happier. I have my doubts, but here goes. I try to make myself a nice cup of matcha every day. The ritual of getting the tea out, whisking and drinking it really makes me very happy.
Music is my passion and profession. As a professional conductor, I'm lucky to have fulfilled my childhood dream. I'm also pursuing a degree in counselling. I stayed up many late nights to catch up on schoolwork. But the work I do in this room makes my heart feel full. When I have spare time, I'm working on portraits. I'm drawing Thich Nhat Hanh, a peace activist whose teachings greatly inspire me. "5 days passed quickly, and I'm back at Dr. Ho's office.
Hey, Prof O.
Hey, Jason,
How's
how are you?
things? Yeah, I'm good. Feeling good. Feeling happy, I think.
Oh, great. I'm glad that's happening for you. For the past 5 days that you were asked to take a selfie each day, how did that process work out for you?
I thought it was a bit weird at first, but as I was taking the photograph, I was not smiling to see what it looks like, and then I was smiling. And somehow, I think I look nicer when I smile. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I got used to just taking it and not having to make it look perfect. Mm-hmm. So I think it did change throughout the 5 days.
It seems that things have certainly progressed positively for you. Your experience is actually very similar to a recent research at the end of the experimentation period. For people who were taking selfie, they discovered that their smile changed across time. So like what you experienced became more natural. It became less self-conscious and they're contented with that. People who were taking pictures of things that made them happy became more reflective. They start thinking about things that made life meaningful, that allowed them to feel wellness in life. And again, very similar to what you've gone through.
So how can taking a selfie make me feel happy?
When you take a selfie of yourself smiling, that smile itself activates different muscle groups in our face. It's an emotion that's being triggered and the brain recognizes that you're happy. Then it releases all the feel-good chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and you feel good about it.
And what about the pictures of things that make me feel happy? How can those make me feel happy?
When you're taking pictures of things that brings you joy, you're slowing down. You remind yourself of what you're actually doing and why is this important to you. All of these small reminders take us away from the constant negativity that we live our life on a day-to-day basis. For many of us, we live our day in a sort of automatic, robotic mode that we don't really pay attention. Research showing that 50% of the time our mind wanders. So for example, I could be sitting in a lecture hall and my mind is not thinking about the lecture. Our mind is wondering, what should I eat next? Or wondering, well, I don't look very good today. When our mind wanders, 70% of the time it wanders into negativity. Our brain is much more prone to negativity and we call this a negativity bias.
It shocks me that we're hardwired to think negatively.
Let me show you how it works. Let's go.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a mock-up of a classical experiment. We're using electroencephalogram, EEG, to measure the activity that's in your brain when you're being exposed to different types of stimulus.
Okay.
So I'm going to invite you to just sit in front of the chair. So you'll be shown a series of photographs. I will take a look at the brainwave. Okay, Jason, I think we have enough. So why don't I invite you to come back to this side of the room and have a seat.
Oh, Great, thank you.
Okay.
Wow, it's a relief to get the cap off.
So Jason, what was the experience like for you?
Well, the images went by quite fast. I was more alert for the negative images rather than the positive.
The experience that you have is exactly what the researcher back in 1998 found. The neuroactivity is much more pronounced when people are exposed to negative images. The top line is when we are exposed to neutral images, there's not much variation. But when people are exposed to positive images, there is definitely a change. But it's not as pronounced as the most bottom line, which is the negative images.
Wow.
And so people are much more likely to respond intensely toward negative images as compared to positive ones.
So why are we hardwired for negativity?
It has to do with evolutionary psychology. So if you think about our ancestor of the human species, they used to live in the wilderness, they have wild animals chasing them all the time, and they're exposed to the element. So if they're not careful, they could be eaten by wildlife. They're constantly hypervigilant about negativity. Even though we no longer live in the wilderness, our way of thinking has not changed. We're still thinking of the worst case scenario. And so when you capture moments that makes you happy and brings you joy, you break that vicious cycle and you remind yourself that life is just not filled with negativity, and you affirm the positive things that's in your life.
I think you've really nudged me into trying to do that as a daily habit. So it turns out the dangers that our cavemen ancestors encountered on a daily basis hardwired us for negativity, especially when our mind wanders. But on the other hand, studies have shown that we have it within our brains to synthesize happiness. Just a simple nudge, like a smiling selfie or taking a photograph of something that brings you joy, can help keep negativity at bay. By keeping us grounded in the people or things that make us happy.